name, your title, and where you work.
Yep. So I'm Michael Luciani. I'm one of the co-founders of the Climate Capital Syndicate. I'm also one of the GPs of Juniper, which is a climate capital spin-out fund.
Okay, can you tell me more about Climate Capital? Who are you guys? What are you focused on?
Yeah.
I mean, the name sort of suggests a little bit there,
Right, it's good branding. So Climate Capital is one of the most active climate investors in the world. The Climate Capital Syndicate is actually a big group of about 5,000 angel investors who all want to invest in climate. So we have made, I think over the past few years, almost 500 investments in seed stage climate tech companies. We focus on seed stage and we invest with Climate Capital across kind of all different climate verticals.
But it's not kind of a crowdfunding platform, or is it? Can people invest their own money directly through your platform, or do they invest in you and you choose who to invest in?
Yeah, so we've got two different approaches. One is we have specific kind of deal-by-deal opportunities that people can choose whether or not they want to invest. And then we also have two dedicated funds. So we have a seed fund that's kind of the core climate capital fund vehicle, and that's a traditional venture vehicle. We also have Juniper, which is my focus, and that is a fund specifically dedicated to kind of early stage bioindustrials. So people who are focused on hard to decarbonize areas and using novel engineered biology to find solutions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So looking at kind of your activities to date then, do you have some highlights, some numbers you can share? How many deals have you done? What's the typical deal in terms of average deal size, maybe stage and sector?
Yes.
Anything you can share on that?
Totally. So Climate Capital is usually investing between 100,000 and 500,000. That's the same for our syndicate, our funds, Juniper, and Climate Capital is mostly investing at the seed stage. We invested in almost 100 deals last year, and Juniper is seed and pre-seed. We will lead rounds, and we are a little bit more selective. We invest in about 10 deals a year.
Okay. Any investments that are noteworthy? Any sort of, I guess it's still early days for you guys in terms of the age of the fund, but...
Yeah. In 2021, I led a deal in a company called Colossal. It was their seed round. They are working on bringing back the woolly mammoth. And we were excited both because we feel like humanity having the ability to bring back extinct species is a good idea, and also because we think that genetic engineering is a really interesting technology set at an inflection point where it's cheap enough to do things that we couldn't do before, which some of those things might be bring back the mammoth, some of those things might be making carbon negative industrial chemicals or drought-resistant crops. And Colossal was recently in the news. They had a Series C round where they raised, I think, $200 million at a $10 billion valuation. So that was our first like decacorn.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
Are they close to actually doing this? Is this live and happening as we speak?
Yeah, I think they will be bringing back the first extinct animals over the next 2 years. I think before the end of this decade, knock on wood, we'll have a woolly mammoth.
And where will they be? Like in a safari park or in a laboratory, or what's the utility?
I think that they are hoping with some of the different megafauna that they're bringing back that these are keystone species. So the easiest thing to look up is like what happened when we reintroduced wolves to Yellowstone. It stabilizes ecosystems. And so there's a big argument for putting these species in conservation parks that are in their native biomes so that they can help to stabilize those biomes, which are, in most cases, becoming more and more unstable as the climate changes.
It's an interesting topic. I'd love to talk more about it. Yeah, I'm a fan of Jurassic Park, so I can see where this is going. But a little bit of topic. Yeah. Going back to kind of the core in what you normally invest in, where do you see the most amount of traction in terms of the problem and the sort of vertical that you are investing in or your network is leaning in the most around?
So, I think that over the past decade, about 75% of private climate funding has gone towards kind of personal transportation, electric vehicles, and energy generation. And those solutions are more mature now, right? We have large publicly traded companies making EVs. We have solar panels that are cheaper than opening up a new, natural gas facility. And the total pie of emissions, energy and transportation only account for about a third of global annual emissions. So we find ourselves focusing more on the unaddressed 2/3. And that really comes from the built environment, it comes from food and ag, and it comes from kind of material synthesis. How do we make everything from like this table to these cameras to our clothes? And a lot of that is actually petrochemical derived. And that's one of the reasons why we spun out Juniper. We feel like, a petrochemical is just crushed up organic matter that was fossilized, and we can use biology and we can engineer biology to make the same molecules in a way that actually is net negative. It's using CO2 rather than emitting CO2.
Okay. So how do you find out about these opportunities? How do you deal source?
Well, the Climate Capital brand has become well known, which we're very fortunate about. And so we have a huge amount of inbound interest. We probably see 15,000 deals every year. We also have close relationships with, I'm sure, everyone else that you're interviewing, and a series of different incubators and accelerators and government grant programs, like the ARPA programs, the advanced projects or advanced research projects that the government funds. Those, in addition to academic labs, are really fertile places to find new technologies that are ready to be spun out.
So you see a lot of pitches and ideas floating around. You do a lot of investments, but there must tens of thousands at least that you have to discard for obvious reasons. You couldn't invest in all of them. So you must have seen the kind of the whole spectrum, good, bad, and the ugly then. Do you have anything to share as an sort of advice to entrepreneurs thinking about fundraising, how to stand out? If you're one out of 15,000, what would you need to do to convince someone like you and your team to give them a second look?
I think that the biggest challenge we see are people who are subject matter experts in something very technical. And they've made a breakthrough, right, which is very exciting. But they haven't yet done their homework in what it means to be an entrepreneur. They haven't figured out that maybe they should find a co-founder who knows how to sell into the industry that they are targeting. Or they haven't thought about how they're going to find customers, or what they might charge those customers, or if those customers might be willing to pay for their solution at all. The easiest red flag we'll see in pitches is someone will come to us, and because we see so many deals, we will know off the top of our head of maybe 12 competitors. And we'll ask them, like, who are your competitors and how are you different? And if they don't know those, that's a big red flag. And hopefully they do, and hopefully they've thought about it and they can say, here's what those people didn't know, or here's what's new. But that level of preparedness is rarer than it should be.
No, that's a really good advice there, very concrete. So what's exciting you at the moment? Are there any trends that you're trying to double down on or capitalize on, or maybe even looking for investments in?
Yeah, we have seen a whole lot of activity in rare earth metals and in mining. So, as we move towards electrifying all of these different parts of our energy stack, batteries are important. And, we see companies who are working hard to figure out how we recycle metals that have already been mined, how we mine and acquire metals in a sustainable way. And even, on the bio front, we have made investments in companies that are using engineered microbes to extract different rare earth elements out of either mine tailings or recycled materials in a way that allows the cost for accumulating more copper, more lithium, more cobalt to be low, and to also be something that can happen onshore, which is important.
So you could classify clean tech or green tech broadly within the ESG segment.
Yeah.
It feels like ESG kind of came out of nowhere like 10, 20 years ago, and it became kind of trendy and popular. And now some people are arguing that it might have peaked. Some investment firms are offering their investors to opt out from pursuing ESG investment opportunities specifically. Do you think ESG has peaked, and how does that impact you and the interest from your investors and opportunities for you and entrepreneurs in this space? Yeah,
I think that all markets, especially within venture capital, go through these hype cycles. And often you find right after a hype cycle is the best time to be investing, because a lot of money has been put to work, and that has helped great technologies and ideas to be developed. And then when money gets scarce, it helps winnow down the competition. So if we know 12 competitors, maybe there should only be 1 or 2 companies that are really going to change an industry. Those companies will get funded. Those companies will also have better access to talent. And those companies will have better access to customers, right? Customers aren't overwhelmed with 20 different people being like, buy my thing. And I think a lot of investors who maybe don't have domain expertise do leave. And that means that the ones who are left to work with those companies have the expertise to really help them succeed. The one thing I do want to say is that we make sure that every company we invest in is a good investment regardless of sustainability. So we want the company to have surety that they can compete and win purely on cost and quality. And if they're also more sustainable, then that's the right investment for us. I think a lot of investors previously said, maybe carbon credits will come into reality in the United States and that will make the economics work, or maybe legislation will help make the economics work. And those companies that were relying on those things might be in more trouble today than I would like, but it also means that, those business models that might not have been sustainable will be weeded out, and maybe those talented people will go work on a more viable solution, and it makes me really optimistic. I think we're in a better place than people think.
So I guess related to that, and on that point, Trump obviously put a stop to a lot of grants and incentives. Is there any hope for companies that are sort of perhaps leveraged or that benefited from some of those to keep growing even this year and for many years to come?
Yeah, I think that everyone involved in the ecosystem knows that these impacts have happened and will probably keep happening. And the best companies may be slowed down by this, right? Maybe they've gotten a grant and that grant is no longer around. But they will not be put out of business because their core economics work. And I think that it will again be this kind of winnowing function where for a company that was only being propped up by maybe a grant, those companies will go out of business. And those people will go work on maybe a stronger idea, and I hope we'll be better off for it. I also hope that maybe not all of that funding will dry up, and I think that based on experience with the past Trump administration, sometimes philanthropy will step in and will create more non-dilutive funding opportunities in place of what the government might have done.
So looking ahead then and sort of wrapping things up and trying to finish on a positive note, why is this a great time to be an investor in clean tech, and why is this a great time to be an entrepreneur in this space?
Yeah, I think that the need and the urgency is more clear than ever. And if you are building a company and you believe in your heart of hearts that this is what you're meant to do and this is what the world needs, there's less competition for you than there has been. And there's a lot more clarity in what you need to do to build a viable business. The thing that we've seen that's actually, I think, pretty interesting is a lot of companies are kind of changing their branding. So instead of leading with a sustainability story, they're leading with a story about next-gen manufacturing jobs, about supply chain resiliency, onshoring, and they're doing the same thing, right? They haven't changed anything, but they're using different language to talk about it that maybe makes a generalist investor that's not sure about climate better understand their value proposition. And at the end of the day, there are a lot of companies that are just plain really strong, that can make better products than the dirty kind of processes they replace, and those companies are still doing really well.
Excellent. Thank you very much